I welcome you both to the University of Newcastle after this Hunter Heritage Network workshop. It's a pleasure to be involved from the university perspective in these activities. There's a whole host of things that are important about heritage and the environment, which will be part of the process of today's proceedings. Heritage looks to the past and to the future, and the environment we learn about the past by looking at events of the past, and the environment is absolutely critical to the future. Our welcoming speech and our opening comments will be from Robyn Parker, the Minister for Heritage and the Environment. Robyn's relatively new in her position, and in fact Robyn and I just met the other night at a function, and we exchanged the sorts of things that new people, first-time meetings, exchange. I said to her, "How do you enjoy your new role?" And she said to me, "A lot to learn, a lot to do." Robyn asked me how I enjoy my role, which I've been in here at the university for 5.5 years, and I can say I've still got a lot to learn and a lot to do. So one of the great things about the roles that Robyn is in and the roles that I am is that every day brings a fresh thing to learn and about 110 fresh things to do. So please join with me in welcoming Robyn to say a few introductory remarks.
Thank you, Kevin. And yeah, we did meet the other night to farewell Nick Saunders, who many of you will know, and what a great impression he has made on this university and turned it around. And at the same time, we got to see a number of notable people from New South Wales, Governor Murray this year, and including the Premier, who commented on the great work that this university is doing, and certainly it's terrific to be here. And thank you, Sarah, for organising it, and my welcoming committee, who met me coming up the hill, and I was very pleased to be able to be in the right position and the right spot. It is pretty awesome to be the Minister for Heritage. Now, you know, the cliche thing that politicians say is, oh, it's a great privilege to be, and it's an honour to be a minister and all that sort of thing. Everyone yawns, but the reality is it is an enormous privilege, because you get to see fantastic examples of what passionate people are doing in New South Wales, and there are no more passionate people than those that are involved in heritage, and I think we're just hitting our straps when it comes to heritage. I know your topic is about a renaissance, but look, the stories are just capturing the imagination of so many people now. And Johnny and I were at Maitland on, was it Friday?
Yeah, last Friday.
And talking about a great Newcastle story, and he's bringing the Heritage Channel to Newcastle. I've tried to encourage him that it's all happening in Maitland, but anyway, maybe we'll get our second example, second opportunity in Maitland. But living in the Hunter, where we are so rich in heritage, and being the Minister for Heritage, being the member for Maitland, a fantastic heritage town, or city as it is really a privilege, and I every day see more and more examples. And one of the first things the first thing I got to list on the State Heritage Register, of course, was the Newcastle Cathedral. So how fantastic that was, and for me to see that recognition and the wonderful artefacts that are stored there. So with this university and with all of the jobs that you're doing out locally, supported by local councils, supported by the state government, and indeed some of you in your own commercial endeavours, working together with us, I think we can achieve many things. The idea of a standalone heritage minister came to us because of the conflictions between heritage and planning, and having heritage located within the planning department seemed at odds on many occasions, and really what we wanted to do was say, look, stand alone, let's take heritage out, give it its own profile and significance. And that's what we've done. It actually works quite well with the environment portfolio, my other portfolio too, because there are synergies there. And I know today you're talking about Aboriginal cultural heritage. One of the large undertakings I'm doing, and you know, new governments get criticised for reviewing things, but look, if we wanted everything to be the same, we wouldn't have had a change of government. But one of the things we are reviewing, and it's been through Cabinet, we're about to embark on what could take up to 12 months consultation on Aboriginal cultural heritage. So that's within the Environment Department, but obviously has a big impact on heritage, because currently Aboriginal cultural heritage lies within the Native Vegetation Act. And cultural heritage is much broader than that in an Aboriginal sense when you're looking at what is cultural heritage. It's what's in the ground, but it's also the stories, the song lines, the whole spirituality of that cultural heritage. But more than that, what we're doing by this review is not just identifying what is Aboriginal cultural heritage, but working out a way in which that can be streamlined and still be significantly identified, not diminished by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I think we'll end up with a standalone act that is an Aboriginal cultural heritage act of some description, but I can't preempt that consultative process. But we will be looking at how we can streamline it, because currently it doesn't work for anyone. It doesn't work for traditional owners, and it doesn't work for those who want to develop land in any form, whether it be for a mine or a KFC site or any sort of development, housing or otherwise, because no one knows who speaks the country. And I had a story from a developer recently who, before the Act changed, went and spoke with two Aboriginal groups, two land councils, thought he had identified which land councils. They identified a number, so they did some extensive digs. They did an archaeological survey, or whatever the technical term is for that. A lot of money went into the whole thing. They planned the development around those sites, and then the change happened with the legislation. They ended up having to go back to the drawing board and now consult with 23 people and go through that exercise again. So we really want to know, who speaks the country, who has that expertise, how can we take out the angst out of it, not slow down the planning process, and how can we also take out what's occurring more and more as litigation from one group to another. But I do know that when we come to looking at the planning process, and we are revamping the Planning Act, that heritage has got to be considered up front, not something that is considered to slow the process down. And more often than not, that's what people say to me, everything was going well until you heritage people got involved and then it all slowed down. So we want to put that up the front. And that's why you and your roles are so critical, because identifying significant sites, putting that information there, mapping it, so we have that information up front, it's not a surprise later. And so that we put requirements on industry, on development to make sure that preservation occurs. So that means, for example, we've had a mining application in Ashton Colliery, and an issue over Wombo House. And Ashton Colliery really understand, I think, how important it is to preserve that house in some form, and they're prepared and putting significant dollars and energy behind working out a solution. So I think that's good. In terms of other things that we're doing with the heritage role, we're going to take out a number of planning oversight committees. The Heritage Council, I think, is working very well at the moment. We're probably looking at reducing the numbers slightly so it works even better. But I do think it is working quite well. However, feedback to me on anything that isn't working, please let me know. Other parts of my portfolio are the Historic Houses Trust. So that is, you know, Government House, Vaucluse House, the Museum of Sydney, a number of other places of significance in Sydney. I also have quite a lot of interaction with the National Trust and some of their houses which are more regionally based. But, you know, the heritage portfolio is $20 million. We managed to maintain that same amount of money this year, so it's quite significant. We didn't lose anything out of the budget. So it was a good fight, and we ended up with a good result. I've been looking lately at a number of the Historic Houses Trust endangered house programs. I went to see one last week. We bushwalked into what was Hume's house down at Appin, where they're doing biobanking as well as they're going to restore the house and then put it back on the market. Some great restorations of properties and some terrific adaptive reuse examples. With my environment hat on, I've also looked at and challenged the Environment Department to come up with a Green Star rating that acknowledges the carbon retention, the carbon savings in adaptive reuse of a heritage building. Because it strikes me that there are a number of heritage buildings that have been well done in terms of retrofitting, in terms of adaptive reuse, and they have achieved the same energy Green Star rating as a number of greenfield sites buildings, but it is much harder. It's cost effective wise much harder, but at the same time they haven't destroyed and used a lot of carbon in building a new building from scratch. So by retaining that heritage building, they've saved. So that's a challenge to try and work out if we can have a specific, or whether that's just a rubbish idea, and they'll tell me that in a long-winded way probably. But I just think it's a challenge worth doing, because industry wants to use and government businesses want to go into Green Star rated buildings, and we want them to go into heritage buildings wherever possible. And particularly in the Newcastle region, you know, if we can restore some of our wonderful heritage buildings and reuse them with energy efficiency, that would be fantastic. So I'm just looking at the pages and pages of notes that I've got here to see if there's anything I've missed, and I'm really keen to make sure that that we do put heritage on the front foot, that we continue to look for those stories out there, those wonderful stories, that we continue to restore and reuse our wonderful buildings, and that we continue to work with councils and with other government departments, so that heritage is a consideration at the beginning and throughout the process. So it's one of those critical issues that we look at in terms of maintaining the environment, but maintaining our cultural heritage and our built environment as much as we possibly can. So I look forward to hearing from any of you that have got ideas. Please don't hesitate to drop me an email, give me a call. I'm not far away, and at least I'll probably know what you're talking about, the building you're talking about, or at least some idea of what space you're working in. And also though, keen to hear what challenges you've got, and if there's a roadblock somewhere along the way with what my department's doing, let me know. And I'm hoping that you will engage with the consultations on Aboriginal cultural heritage, so that we can make that a really positive and streamlined and efficient process. So have a great day today. Thank you.
Minister, you mentioned the inquiry about the Planning Act and the fact that the heritage. How are those two things going to be brought together, so that, because obviously planning, heritage, they're intertwined in the processes of managing?
The way in which our portfolios are being reorganised is that we have clusters of portfolios. So we work with planning quite and the Department of Primary Industries. So we're all in the same cluster. So not only do the ministers meet on a regular basis, and we are constantly meeting on these changes, but there is also our directors general meet, and then senior staff meet. So not only is there and you can make a submission, I think, to the planning inquiry as well, the town planning inquiry. But not only is there, so there's those levels, but we're also working on a strategic land use policy too. Now that's, fortunately for us, our trial with that is in the Hunter region. So the strategic land use policy looks at what are the competing issues and needs in a regional sense that we can map and say, okay, this is what we want to consider before we make any changes in terms of major development. So the key planks of those in the Hunter region are how do we balance the growth of our communities, and in Maitland where we're set to grow by 70% in 20 years, how do we manage that? How do we maintain that lifestyle? What are the transport linkages? But then looking at how you maintain the viticulture industry, the equine industry, alongside the mining industry. And part of that is heritage considerations too. So we're in that game, and we're at the table on that, but we're also at the table on the planning changes. So the good thing is we've taken Part 3A out. Now, Part 3A was designed for state significant sites. And familiar examples to many of you would be Caston Hill Bay, Huntley, some of those others. Now, there are sites that are state significant. Barangaroo, for example, is state significant. And we'll have to work a process out that is dealt with. But a minister signing off on that really isn't the way we want to go. And the Part 3A turned off a number of other requirements. You know, some of the native vegetation requirements, some of the environmental requirements, and heritage really took a back seat. So we've scrapped that, but you know, but that doesn't mean we're not at the table.
I wanted to make a comment. I was very encouraged about your statement about heritage and its conserved energy receiving some sort of rating.
Yeah.
The American system, you may have been aware of, is very good.
No, I'm not aware of that. So they've had an idea like that too.
LEEDS system in America for a long time has had that.
Oh, okay.
All the mathematics has been done, so to speak.
Okay. I'd love
and I'm also encouraged to hear you talking so much about regionality. I think some of the big heritage issues are, or some of the difficult heritage issues are because of the gulf between a state and a local perspective. I'm just interested about what changes you might be making to the Heritage Council, and whether you'll keep going with having a historian on the Heritage Council, because they're not there at the moment ex officio. They're there by the grace of the Minister, and we'd like to see them there built in, as it were.
Okay, well, firstly, I wasn't aware of the American. They had that idea first, which is interesting, so I'd really love some information on that. Second one, in terms of the numbers of the Heritage Council, it's currently 11, and it is positional. You know, a lot of the boards and things that I've found in my portfolio, and I find a new one every day, are based on entitlements from a particular category of people. And so I wasn't aware that there wasn't a position for a historian, so I'll have a look at that. My plans really were to take off two government representatives and probably encourage them to be there ex officio, so that we've got, you know, because they can go along, they're paid, they really don't need to have a voting right. It would be better to have community representation. So that was really my plan, and I'll be encouraging them to come as ex officios.
Thank you.
This is Robert's comment trail project. I'd like to reinforce the request for a historian on the Heritage Council. There used to be one there, and when it got revamped, that position was dropped. It's really important that when you're looking at history, you've got someone there who understands. So when you're looking at heritage, you've got somebody there who understands the history of it.
Okay.
So I'm Heritage Advisor to Moree, Wettonshire and Shell Harbour, so I deal with urban and cities.
Where did you say Moree and Shell Harbour?
Wetton, which is around Brentford and Young.
Okay.
Jeez.
Gee, you must spend your life on the road.
And the Heritage Council recently had its regional meeting at Moree.
Yes, I know. I couldn't make it, unfortunately.
And part of my presentation to the Heritage Council was the conflicts arising under the exempt and complying and heritage management, and how this is having a really detrimental effect on supplementing rural towns' incomes from cultural tourism, and how the lack of oversight of the private certification scheme is having a major impact. For example, Moree has been running a program now for 25 years to revamp streetscapes and to keep shop fronts. Its conservation area is actually a commercial area, it's not houses, and to keep people on the footpath and to build it up. And that's been almost changed so quickly through signage, being able to take out a shop front without heritage assessments, etc. So there's that conflict between the planning regulation and heritage management. It's not stopping business, and the businesses there are actually wanting to keep the thing going.
Yeah.
But lack of understanding or fly-in, fly-outs are changing.
So it's the private certifiers in that loop that you think are the problem?
It's also the private certifiers, and it's also trades, and I'm actually going to mention trades this morning about trade training, but there's this inherent conflict between exempt and complying and heritage management. It doesn't have to be the fight it is, but you know, you can work with the system rather than what's happening now.
If I can add to that, in the last changes to the EPA Act, complying development was expanded, whereby now demolition is complying development if it's not already listed in an environmental planning instrument. So that makes it very difficult for particularly regional councils where some of them have heritage studies that are 25 years old to be on that front foot, because we haven't done the catch-up work. Not for lack of trying, but the catch-up work hasn't been there.
So if it's not locally listed, then
it's compliant. 90% of our work is local level.
Yeah.
It's not the
state.
It's not the cathedrals. As lovely as the cathedral is, and with the earthquake and everything, but almost all of our stuff is at local, and there's really got to be a catch in there between the local work.
Did they have any answers for you? Were they engaged?
I believe after our presentation they had a lengthy discussion amongst themselves, but I'm not privy to what that discussion was.
Okay. I'll raise it. Thank you very much.
Our network is very grateful that you were able to come and attend today. We think we're probably the envy of the rest of the New South Wales heritage establishment, because you're from our region, so you speak our language, so to speak. You understand what the issues are. There are a lot of emerging challenges there. I certainly think you have a very exciting portfolio, and it's very extensive. I didn't realise you had Historic House Trust as well on your radar, so that's fantastic. Really great to see the Endangered Building Fund expanded, and perhaps consideration given to a lottery scheme as in the UK. It's very heartening to see that your government is going to look at Aboriginal cultural heritage and perhaps a standalone act. So we certainly would welcome that here and that initiative, and we'll be part of the discussions about that. We definitely would welcome a review of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act as it augurs with heritage management. There are some inherent problems there. Since 1995, I think we've had a struggle. We've had a whittling down and a weakening of some of our our best practice legislative elements. So it'd be great to see that as part of your efforts, and we welcome that. We also acknowledge that you're interested in our feedback and our professional advice. So certainly our network, we're made up of professionals as well as community as well. So we have a really good spread of expertise and experience here. And I'm very interested to hear that you are interested in carbon savings through adaptive reuse. And the CSIRO has done a whole study, as Hector said, about embodied energy and quantifying that. It's not an easy thing to do.
No, it's not.
But absolutely, it's something that we have to put into the mix in terms of our response to climate change, in terms of retaining embodied energy.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic to see. So without further ado, I'd just like to thank you very much. And this is for you, Minister, to put into your Can everyone see that?
Oh, that is good.
And it says, presented to the Honourable Robyn Parker MP,
thank you so much.
Minister for the Environment, Minister for Heritage.